Welcome to the Cycling Roadmap Weekly Show. My name is Sheridan, and today we're going to take the first look at the UCI points for the 2026 to 2028 point cycle. We'll have a full review of all of the races coming up this week. But first, let's take a look at the recently concluded Santos Tour Down Under that's finished on Sunday. All right, the Santos Tour Down Under got underway in downtown Adelaide for a 3.6 kilometer prologue. A lot of the quick, fast times went off about a third of the way through, and the fastest of those times was set by Sam Watson of Ineos. Now, he was a pre-race favorite, so he got his second prologue victory of his career. So he held the ochre jersey going into stage one. Stage one was a pretty straightforward race. It's a pretty easy breakaway to contain. Everyone knew it was going to be a sprint into Nunda, and it did end up being a sprint. Decathlon CGM definitely had the strongest lead out. They came really early, probably I think it was around 600 meters to go, but they had three guys in front of Tobias Lind Andersen. It was a slight rise up to the finish, and Andersen looked like he was going to run out of legs, but he just hit the finish line first. One of the pre-race favorites, definitely someone to get favorite to get a stage, Matt Brennan of Visma Lease Bike. He made a really fast run up on the outside, in for second, and Sam Welsford of Ineos, he looked like he could have won, but he took the inside line, and there was no space between Andersen and the barriers, and he kind of had to check up and settle for third. So, yep, Decathlon CMA CGM got their first stage win, and also the ochre jersey. So Andersen finished the prologue, I think 9 seconds behind Sam Watson. So yeah, they got the leader's jersey going into stage two. Little did we know it, but stage two ended up being the GC day. We had, I think, two ascents of the corkscrew. The last ascent coming around, I think, about 10 kilometers from the finish. At the bottom, UAE lit it up. Adam Yates set the pace initially, and then as soon as he pulled off, Jay Vine attacked. Jonathan Narvaez sat in the back just a little bit, or sort of in the peloton, until he knew that he could hop clear. He joined Vine at the top, and he was struggling the whole way up though. At the top of the corkscrew, the road continued uphill, so they got to the top and made a left instead of making a right to go back towards Campbelltown, and the road followed the ridgeline up before the descent into Uredla. And Narvaez never was able to take a pull. He sat on the whole way. Jay Vine towed the pair clear, and ended up taking the victory. By the top of corkscrew, I think the gap was around 30 seconds, and it just continued to extend. By the time they hit the finish line, they were a minute ahead. There was a group that got clear, a group two, that included Meyer Schmidt, Harry Sweeney, Tesfazion, I think Romo was in there, Andreas Krohn, and a few others. Like I said, they finished about a minute down. I think it was Meyer Schmidt who took the sprint for third, with Harry Sweeney, I believe, in fourth. So at that point, GC was looking absolutely firm. Then stage three into Nairn. Not much to say about the stage. There really wasn't a lot of action. Was a sprint. and Sam Welsford got his redemption. He got his stage win in this tour. I think that puts him up to 7 total stage wins in his career in the Santos Tour Down Under, and the second for Ineos. So great start to the season. Yeah, Welsford proving to be a great signing. So hopefully he can stay healthy and keep competing in the sprints in the coming months. And then the race changed. Coming into stage 4, the anticipated GC day with 3 ascents of Wollonga Hill. A heat dome came over Australia, South Australia, and temperatures rose from about 28 degrees in the previous days, 25 to 28 Celsius, all the way up to about 42, which is at like 105 degrees Fahrenheit. And with the way that Wollonga Hill is situated on the map, there's really only one way in and one way out. So the race organizers, just in terms of spectator safety and safety for the riders, they decided to shorten the stage. I think it ended up being around 130 kilometers. No Wollonga Hill. They really I think they just did 3 circuits of that Wollonga Aldinga Beach circuit that goes through McLaren Vale. Still pretty hard though. I mean, with the temperatures being so high, and the finish. The finish was a pretty difficult 1 kilometer uphill. I think it was around 3.5% for the last kilometer, so it really took the speed out of the legs of the sprinters. There were a handful of crashes on the first lap, but everybody was able to kind of get back. Yeah, no problem. And then, there was also there's also a threat of crosswind. So as the riders were coming sort of up the hill towards Wollonga, it wasn't so much of a factor. But as soon as they kind of like swung and did a U-turn back towards Aldinga Beach and the coastline, it was a fast down there. There was a fast downhill, and then wind coming off their right-hand shoulder. It never was really strong enough to break the bunch. There were a handful of riders that got tailed off just due to that crash on the first lap, but after that, it was not really a factor. Yeah, we had like I said, a difficult sprint in the finale. NSN Cycling had it perfectly timed for the lead out. They brought Ethan Vernon up. And yeah, perfect time. As soon as he opened up his sprint, he immediately had a couple bike lengths, and he was able to get NSN's first victory as a team. And the final day, we always knew it would be hard, it would be aggressive, and it ended up being so. Yeah, Luke Plapp was in the break. We had a strong contingent of riders go up the road. UAE had things pretty under control. They had been hit with quite a few crashes. I think it was Stackelangen who Vigard Stackelangen who crashed on the Wollonga stage and was out. They were already down a couple riders. Oh, and I forgot to mention on the Wollonga stage, briefly, right out of the gate, there was a median in the road, and second overall, Jonathan Narvaez crashed. He was out of the race. I think he broke a couple vertebrae, maybe his scapula. So, yeah, really, really unfortunate for him. So UAE XOG were already down a number of riders. And then going into the Sterling stage, they had things pretty well under control until I think it was around 95 kilometers to go. Kangaroo jumped onto the course, knocked down Jay Vine. It knocked down a handful of other riders. I think also Mikael Bjerg. He had to abandon for UAE. So yeah, really a disaster for them. Ivo Oliveira did a great job kind of keeping things together, but they got a ton of help from other teams who wanted to sprint for the win. So everything was kept together. I think there were at least 70 riders in the main peloton in for the sprint, and it was Matthew Brennan. He'd been trying all week. He had a second place in Tanunda, but he finally got his win. Yeah, very patient in his sprint. He was able to kind of sit and go right at the right time, and comfortable win for Matthew Brennan. So overall GC, Jay Vine with the overall, I think he won by over a minute to Maurer Schmidt of Jaco Alula, and a couple, I think it was maybe 7 or 8 seconds back to Harry Sweeney for EF Education Easy Post in third. We actually found out later after the stage that Jay Vine, who had crashed in that Kangaroo fiasco, he finished the stage with a broken wrist. So he was able to take the win, but it does mean he'll likely be out for upcoming races. I think he was, I believe he was set to do the UAE tour, so I'm sure he will not be doing that. I believe Isaac Del Toro is still on the start line, so they'll still have a strong squad. But now let's take a look at the first UCI points ranking of the 2026 to 2028 cycle. These are going to look kind of funny because we've really only had a handful of races. We had the World Tour race at the Santos Tour Down Under. There's been a handful of races in southern Spain. So there really hasn't been a lot. I think Burgos they've taken some points in some of the 2.2 races that have happened. Who else? We have EF Education Easy Post up there in 7th. A lot of the teams, again, it's going to be heavily weighted towards those who did well in the Santos Tour Down Under. And then we can just kind of maybe more interesting to look at the bottom of the rankings. So, who did not perform in the Tour Down Under? So, Alpecin Premier Tech. Interesting, they had Denson Plowright. He just did not get into the sprints. I don't know what happened. He was in the breakaway the day before one of the sprint days. Very confusing tactics. I don't think the team was particularly happy with his decision to get in the break on that day, and they just did not. They really didn't do anything in the race, other than his break on I think stage 2. Really didn't do anything. Same with Lotto Intermarché. I think Leonard Van Eetvelt crashed at one point. They had a couple abandons, and they were a pretty young squad, but they didn't manage to do a whole lot. I remember last year Alpecin also started really slow until Matthew Van Der Poel started his season, and Jasper Philipsen started his season, and then they really exploded. So I'm sure we'll probably see something similar this year. All right, now let's switch gears and take a look at races up ahead. The first is the Alula Tour. It's probably concluded. It's just concluded by the time of this recording for stage 1. But stage 1 is the Alula Camel Cup track. On this stage last year, they actually went in the opposite direction, and it was stage 5, so reverse order here. But it was the stage that Matteo Moschetti of Q36.5 hit those crazy speeds of over 80 kilometers per hour on a downhill tailwind. For safety purposes, they swapped it around. Yeah, it's a slight drag now of maybe 2-3% up to the finish line, so it should be much safer. Stage 2 is the Manshia train station. So this was also on the course from last year, and it goes past the Mariah venue. It's an incredible. You see pictures of it. It's incredible. You can check out our photos from last year for this stage. But yeah, the venue is all mirrors, and when you look at it from afar, it doesn't look like it is there. It all of the mountains just reflect off of the mirrors, and yeah, it's really incredible. I highly encourage you to go to the website, find the stage from the Alula Tour last year, and take a look at the pictures. It's really incredible. But yeah, it's just a venue for concerts and other events. But yeah, like I said, it's absolutely stunning. I believe that should be another sprint. Stage three is should be a GC day to the Birjeda Mountain. Last year we had that gravel fiasco. They did a couple. They did a few circuits, like finishing circuits before the climb, and there was a road that they just didn't pave. I don't know what they expected to happen, but yeah, lots of punctures. I don't remember if there was a crash or not, but they had to neutralize the stage. They went like 10 kilometers an hour past that gravel section. They cut a full lap off, and then they basically unleashed the race right at the bottom of the climb. But it's super steep. Um, the finish is just over the top, maybe like 200 meters. It's not far. And Tom Pidcock, yeah, waited until I think maybe like 300 or 400 meters to go last year, and won the stage by a couple seconds. Stage four, I believe this is a new finish. I don't think that they didn't do this last year, I'm pretty sure as well. So I believe it's a new finish. Dead on sprint finish. The last corner comes 4.5 kilometers from the line. Yeah, perfectly straight road through the desert. Should be yeah, guaranteed. Like I said, guaranteed sprint finish. And then stage five to the Herat Uwarid. This is an extremely difficult climb. It's 3 kilometers, averages 12%, but the middle section, there's sustained sections of over 20%. Pidcock danced away on the steepest section last year, and was able to solo to the victory. So unlike stage three, the finish line it's around 9 kilometers from the finish line, from the top. So the top is 9 kilometers from the finish line. Long TT, it's pretty strong. There's a pretty strong crosswind last year. So if you can get a small group together, a small chase, you could potentially haul anyone back. It didn't happen last year because I think there were only two or three, maybe three riders in the chase, a couple teammates. So yeah, sandbagging. But yeah, Pidcock took the win last year, and we'll expect very aggressive racing on the final day in stage five. All right, next up are the races in Mallorca. Slightly different format this year, which yeah, I'm pretty excited to see. But the races kick off with the Trofea Calvia. It's 3,000 meters of climbing, very difficult. I think this course goes up the easier side of the Col de Sawyer. And then the second half of the stage, it definitely gets a bit easier. So could be yeah, a small GC group. There might be enough time for drop groups to come back, but it's not going to be a full peloton. I don't believe it'll be a full peloton coming to the finish. The second day is the Trofeo Seis Salines. This is what I'm actually quite interested for. It is a pan-flat team time trial. Now, the Tour de France starts in Spain. It starts in Barcelona, and there is a team time trial. I have no doubt that the inclusion of the team time trial in Mallorca, is a result of the upcoming races. So we have, like I said, the Tour de France team time trial, and then Paris-Nice in the past few years has also had a team time trial. So yeah, we'll get to see teams come out with probably pretty good squads, and they're really going to test themselves. So I think this is going to be a very competitive team time trial, and something we'll have to yeah, we'll dig into next week. Just look at the results. The third day, the Trofeo Serra Tramontana. It's probably the most difficult day of the whole week. It includes the Puy-Mayor, yeah, the Col de Soulière, and then finishes with an 8.5 kilometer, 5% climb up to the Col de Sa Batalla. Sorry, I do not speak Spanish. Pardon my pronunciation. Yeah, right near the top, there's a short descent to the finish. So yeah, if someone is away, they should have no problem staying away as long as they stay on their bike. So that should be an aggressive, again, an aggressive race, and probably one where we can see some early season form for the GC guys. The fourth day, Trofeo Andrax to Pollença. They're doing the hard side of the Puy-Mayor, about 2/3 into the stage. There is a long descent into Pollença, and then there's a finishing climb up the Mirador de Colomar. It's not as hard as the Batalla from the Tramontana day, from the day before, but it is over 3 kilometers at 6%. So we should still see a good race up to the finish. And then the final day, definitely one for the sprinters. It's the only guaranteed day. I say that with inverted quotes. Guaranteed day for the sprinters, the Trofeo Palma. It was meant to be a bunch sprint last year, but Yuri Leitao of Cajo Rao Seguros RGA pipped off the front through the last corner. Yes, descended through the last corner and was able to hold off the peloton for the win. But I expect a bunch sprint. It ends with 5 laps through Palma, along the coast, and kind of back in through town. So yeah, very dynamic sprint, and a good way to round out the 5 days of racing in Mallorca. All right, next up we have the GP de Marseille. So yeah, 146 kilometers, 2,300 meters of climbing on the day. It's the opening of races in France. I love this race. It's always very dynamic. The Col de la Gineste is a beautiful climb. It comes 10 kilometers from the finish. If you've only got 10 kilometers to watch, I highly recommend watching the last 10. Yeah, really beautiful. Last year, Axel Laurence, Timo Kielik, Paul Seixas, and Kevin Vauquelin were away. They got away and then just played around into the finish. They got caught down the descent of the Gineste on the way to the finish, and then Cofidis came through with one of their few wins of 2025 with Valentin Ferrand sprinting for the win. All right, we're back in Australia for the Surf Coast Classic. For the Surf Coast Classic, 157 kilometers from Lorne to Turkey. This is it has historically been a bunch sprint. There's really not a lot on the profile, so I wouldn't bet against a bunch sprint. Last year, Tobias Lund Anderson won, and I would not bet against him. He won one stage in the Santos Tour Down Under, but was definitely the most consistent. Ended up with the sprint jersey. So I would definitely be keeping him on your radar for the Surf Coast Classic. And the final race on our program for next week is the Cadel Evans Great Ocean Road Race. It's the last race in Australia before we say goodbye. We'll be heading to the desert and to cold northern Europe. So yeah, it's a good chance to catch some sun rays for the riders and get one last race in. It's a race from Geelong to Geelong, 182 kilometers. The finishing circuit is very difficult, particularly the Shallambra Crescent climb. It's only 1.3 kilometers, average of 7.8, but it only gets steeper. It starts pretty gradual and then ramps up right to the finish. Very steep, over 15% at the top. Last year, Mauro Schmidt pipped off. He chipped off the front. I don't remember exactly how many riders were in that front group, but it was a pretty sizable group. On the descent, he got away on the big wide road and was able to solo in for the win. Um, it's always a very dynamic race. You never know whether a handful of climby guys will get away. And if they do get away over Shallambra Crescent, there's one more climb in before the finish. So there's always a chance for teams to get organized. But again, very dynamic. Can be won in a few different ways. And like I said, last chance for the guys in Australia to get a result before they come back to continue the season in Europe. So that is the weekly show for January 27th. Like I said, we've got lots of interesting races to keep an eye on, and we will be back next week to wrap it all up. So thank you very much for watching, and see you next week.